Well, to talk more about Operation Euphrates Shield, we're joined in the studio by Omar Imady, Senior Fellow at the Centre for Syrian Studies at the University of St Andrews. Good to have you with us, Omar. So Euphrates Shield ended in March, but it did successfully recapture several towns from Daesh and secured that border area. So overall, has it been considered a success?
Well, yes, indeed, in terms of the objectives that it has set out for itself at the beginning. I think it's important to put this in a larger context. I think what we're basically seeing right now is that 6 years ago, there were very different assumptions. The question then was, when will the Syrian regime fall? Today, this is no longer about this. It's about how to have a Syria that does not constitute a threat to its neighbors. And I think whether it's in the north, with Turkey, and focusing on what takes place to the south of its borders, or Jordan, what takes place to the north of its borders. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is the attempt of regional and neighboring countries to come to terms with a Syria they didn't expect to see.
One of the objectives set out by Turkey was to try and remove the SDF and the YPG as Washington's main allies in the fight for Raqqa. It hasn't succeeded in that, though, has it?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think we see a lot of ironic stories in Syria, and this is indeed one of them, because, of course, we all know that if what constitutes a terrorist organization is the willingness to use indiscriminate violence, irrespective of the ideological framework, then the PYD falls within this framework. But nevertheless, for various factors that have to do with what's going on in Syria, you have the Americans and at times even the Russians shying away from classifying the PYD under this type of heading, and therefore even at times aligning themselves with them to achieve certain objectives. So you have a lot of irony taking place, at times. Classifications based on certain principles change and alter depending on the situation, and then this is one of them.
But I mean, it's interesting because Turkey offered Washington thousands of troops to help take Raqqa, and Washington preferred to rely on the YPG.
Right, yes, and yet another irony. And I think a lot of these sub-stories, so to speak, may explain in their totality why we arrived here. I think, the story of the Syrian uprising is yet to be written. And perhaps, in 10 or 20 years, we'll look back and we'll say, these various glitches, so to speak, these things that didn't quite make sense when they were taking place, together configured into what we're seeing today.
Operation Euphrates Shield is over, but Turkey still obviously engaged in fighting Daesh in Syria. So what are you expecting to see from military operations onwards from here?
Right. Well, of course, now the focus is on Raqqa and having shifted from Mosul and what does take place or does not take place in Raqqa, and how long will this operation take, and of course the ramification on the civilian population. All of these questions will in a sense be the foundation of where we will go next. So this is now a type of story where every chapter, in a sense, gives birth to the next chapter, and we're unable to see, as analysts of the situation, the larger picture, simply because no one is willing to provide a consistent, principled foundation to how this story works.
Yeah, as I say, the future is an undiscovered country.
Yes, absolutely.
Omar, thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.